Hey, this is the January 25th, 2021 Town of Cary Planning and Zoning Board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you for joining us tonight from your home. We are following the governor's state of emergency orders and are streaming tonight's meeting virtually. All board members, staff members, and applicants are participating remotely. While this is a public meeting, please be aware that it is not a public hearing. Just as was the case for in-person planning and zoning board meetings, there is no opportunity for the public to speak during this meeting. If you have comments about any of these cases, we encourage you to reach out to the staff case manager or the applicant by email or phone. You may reach out to our board members through email. You may also contact council directly through email or during the public speaks out portion of any regularly scheduled town council meeting. Because we are meeting remotely, I will be calling on each member individually to confirm their attendance at this meeting. All motions, seconds, and votes will be verbally obtained. So our first item on agenda tonight is the roll call. I will call on each of you and state if you are present. Don Hamilton.
Present.
Mary Jo Hill.
Present.
Chuck Montgomery. Chuck Montgomery?
I'm afraid Chuck may have dropped off the call. I don't see him here.
Okay. So let me go through the roll call at least, and we'll see if Chuck rejoins us. Steve Crutchfield.
Present.
Jessica Pearson.
Present.
John Sorrell. John Sorrell? John may be absent. Jessica McClure.
Present.
Thank you. And I, Dan McFarland, am also present, and we knew that Nicole Samuel, another board member, had notified that she would be absent from this meeting as well. So just before I proceed, I just want to see if Chuck Montgomery's had a chance to rejoin us. Okay. Even in Chuck's absence, we still have a quorum. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members. So we have its quorum. The second item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Entertain a motion.
This is Don, so moved.
And a second?
This is Jessica Pearson, second.
Okay, thank you. And a roll call. I'll call on each of you to state your vote. Don Hamilton.
Aye.
Mary Jo Hill.
Aye.
Steve Crutchfield.
Aye.
Jessica Pearson.
Aye.
Jessica McClure.
Aye.
And I vote in the affirmative also. So the agenda's been adopted. Next item is the approval of the regular minutes. Is there a motion to approve the December 14th Planning and Zoning Board meeting minutes?
I move to accept the meeting minutes from December.
For December 14th.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jo. Is there a second?
This is Steve. I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. Again, I'll call on each of you for your vote. Don Hamilton.
Aye.
Mary Jo Hill.
Aye.
Steve Crutchfield.
Aye.
Jessica Pearson.
Aye.
Jessica McClure.
Aye.
And I vote in the affirmative as well. So
Can you
minutes
hear
are
me?
accepted.
This is Chuck Montgomery.
Thank you, Chuck. You've rejoined us.
Yes.
So Julie, if you'll mark for the record that Chuck, so now we have 7 members present for the Planning and Zoning Board meeting tonight. Thank you. All right, we only have one case on our docket for this evening. That case is 19 REZ 06, the Carpenter Fire Station PDD rezoning. This evening, and so our staff member is Katie Dry, who will be sharing the staff's presentation, and then we will hear from the applicant. Following the applicant's remarks, all board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff or the applicant. Thank you, Ms. Dry. You may proceed.
Good evening, Board Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Board.
This is a request to rezone 14.6 acres at the intersection of Carpenter Fire Station Road and NC 55 and Indian Wells Road.
Excuse me, Katie, but I feel like we've lost Chuck Montgomery again from the call. Chuck, are you there?
I can hear you.
Are you
hear
a call-in speaker, Chuck? Because I'm not seeing you
Yeah.
on.
I got lost. I was in and then it cut off, so I called in by phone.
Okay, I'm not even noticing where you are on the phone. Okay, but we do have Chuck with us, so go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Julie. This site is the former location of the Edwards grocery store. There is also a few single-family dwellings and a farm pond on the site. The site is next to the Northwest Cary YMCA and Cross Point Church and the Blakely subdivision across Indian Wells Road to the south. The rezoning request coincides with the Cary and Ncdot road widening project for Carpenter Fire Station Road from Cameron Pond Drive to NC 55 Highway, which will be funded by the 2019 Shaping Cary's Tomorrow Parks and Transportation Bond. The project will widen the two-lane road to a 4-lane median divided section with curb, gutter, and bicycle facilities. The project is in the design phase with an anticipated start and completion date from 2022 to 2024. Just east of Highway 55, the Carpenter Fire Station Road realignment project is currently under construction, which will be completed in 2022. As design has progressed on the road widening project, it appears it will impact the subject property more than originally anticipated. The intersection of Carpenter Fire Station Road has shifted slightly to the south to achieve a safer alignment with the Carpenter Fire Station Road Bridge and Intersection Improvement Project just across NC 55 Highway. As a result, the applicants have requested a streetscape reduction along Carpenter Fire Station Road, which we will talk more about further in the presentation. The current zoning is R40, General Commercial, and Office Research and Development. The site is within the Watershed Protection Overlay District, Jordan Lake Subdistrict. The applicants are proposing a planned development district minor, and the Watershed Protection Overlay District will remain. The PDD includes a master plan shown here. Buildings and parking area are in orange. The amenity and office space will be along Highway 55. The PDD will allow up to 300 multifamily units, 5 to 10,000 square feet of office, and 1.5 acres of open space. The open space area is shown in green. The buffers and the streetscapes are also shown in green. The open space will be planted with 50 upper story trees. Community gathering space, which will include a pool and a dog park, will also be on the site. There will also be a sitting area of 3,000 square feet with 4 benches. Other aspects of the PDD include enclosed postal boxes, 4 EV charging stations. HVAC units will be on the roof, shielded from view with a roof line. 200 of the units will have balconies. Architectural conditions for buildings fronting Carpenter Fire Station Road include increasing the masonry to 45% on the north and eastern side of buildings along Carpenter Fire Station Road, and breaking up the building along Carpenter Fire Station Road as well. The site has road frontage on 3 roads. There will be a 30-foot Type A streetscape along Carpenter Fire Station Road. This is a reduction of 20 feet from the LDO requirement of 50 feet. A 50-foot Type A streetscape on Highway 55. The streetscape will be average due to the existing easements along Highway 55. Along Indian Wells Road, there will be a 30-foot Type A streetscape. The applicants are proposing to clear and grade the streetscapes along Carpenter Fire Station and Indian Wells. And to offset the clearing, the new plantings within the cleared streetscapes will exceed the minimum height by 25% of the time of planting. Buildings will be 60 feet high maximum and will transition to a maximum of 50 feet next to Indian Wells Road and Carpenter Fire Station Road. This transition to a lower height is in response to citizen request and feedback in the neighborhood meeting and the council public hearing. There will be access on Highway 55 via a ride-in and ride-out. Other access points will be on Indian Wells, as well as a private access road to the YMCA. Because the site is so close to the intersection of Highway 55, there will be no access on Carpenter Fire Station Road. The applicant has also committed to widen Indian Wells Road to build a left turn lane at Ansley Stream Lane into the Blakely neighborhood. The applicant would be required to widen Carpenter Fire Station Road, NC 55, and Indian Wells Road to meet the Cary Community Plan requirements. PDD zoning districts allow for projects of innovative design and layout that would not otherwise be permitted. And in return for greater flexibility in site design requirements, PDDs are expected to deliver exceptional quality design, above average open space, and circulation. The LDO also states that PDD districts shall not be used as a means of circumventing town-adopted land development ordinance regulations for routine developments. In this case, the applicant has asked to provide alternative standards in the following areas. Streetscapes. They're proposing reduced widths along Carpenter Fire Station Road, a 30-foot wide streetscapes proposed. Clearing and grading along Indian Wells Road and Carpenter Fire Station Road. Averaging along NC 55 highway for the streetscape. To offset this request, they are proposing an increased size of the plantings, additional trees to be planted, and architectural conditions. The applicants are also proposing a parking reduction for residential multifamily units at 1.6 spaces per unit. The parking reduction includes a parking reduction justification statement, which is an attachment to the staff report. They're proposing electric vehicle charging stations, and no parking reduction will be requested for the office use. They're also requesting a champion tree to be removed. And to offset this request, they're proposing to plant 50 upper story trees within the open space for the site. Since the public hearing, the applicant has made the following changes. Buildings fronting Carpenter Fire Station Road will include reduced building heights. They've also added architectural conditions. They have also increased the streetscape along Carpenter Fire Station Road. It was 20 feet at the public hearing. It's been increased to 30 feet. Open space has been increased from 1 to 1.5 acres. They've increased the upper story trees that will be planted within this open space to 50. They've also included a sitting area with 4 benches. They propose to screen the HVAC units with the roof lines for the building, added timing conditions for the office. I also added a clarification of the timing on road improvements and have increased the number of EV charging stations. Staff has conducted a review of the case using policies of the Imagine Cary Community Plan. We find that policies come from the Live, Work, Shape, and Move chapters to be applicable with this request. First, looking at the Live chapter, we note Policy 2 notes there should be provision for high quality housing to accommodate a variety of lifestyles, households, ages, cultures, and incomes. Looking at Policy 3, we note there should be additional housing in new neighborhoods. This area along Indian Wells Road, Carpenter Fire Station Road is redeveloping as a new neighborhood, and this proposal would add 2 housing options in the area. Staff also considered multifamily development along the NC 55 corridor. Looking to the north, it's a destination center as we approach the interchange with NC 540. In this area, there are 4 multifamily developments, which contain 1,200 units altogether. To the south, the closest multifamily units are found in the Brook Arbor and Westwood Park communities, about 1.5 miles away, and there's approximately 400 units within those developments. When looking at the work chapter, we note that the proposal would further Policy 1, which is intended to allow housing close to major employers and RTP, including housing for singles, millennials, and small households. However, the case may only partially support Policy 6. By incorporating small-scale office into the site, the rezoning provides options for new and existing small business uses. However, this PDD misses a prime opportunity to truly mix uses since the amount of office proposed is minimal. According to the Future Growth Framework map, the site is within the mixed neighborhood designation. The pink shade, which is shown on the map, represents that mixed neighborhood. The boundaries of the mixed neighborhood is generally within 2 miles of RTP. It's intended to provide housing options for employers close to RTP, and therefore should include a variety of residential land use types and densities. A limited amount of non-residential uses may occur on the periphery of neighborhoods. Currently, there are about 10,000 dwelling units within the mixed neighborhood boundaries. The mix consists of 53% detached dwellings, 29% townhouses, 17% multifamily sites. Given the subject site is at the intersection of 2 thoroughfares and includes a proposal for 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of office, the proposed use for this rezoning could be found to be consistent with the mixed neighborhood designation. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan identifies the Panther Creek Greenway corridor extending through the site. The Carpenter Fire Station Road Widening project will provide additional bike and pedestrian connectivity along the road once construction is complete. On the subject site, the applicant has proposed to tie the portion of the Panther Creek Greenway into the street side trail along Carpenter Fire Station Road, and staff concurs with this approach. A neighborhood meeting was held on May 1st of 2019. There were 15 attendees. Questions and concerns were regarding access points onto Indian Wells Road, the number of proposed units, the types of units, which of course were multifamily, loss of open space and trees, the height of the buildings. And in response to neighbor concerns shared at the meeting, the applicant made several changes which are reflected in this proposal, some of which include stepping down the building height, as well as a commitment to a left turn lane into Ansley Stream Lane. A remote public hearing was held on June 11th of 2020. There were 8 public hearing comments submitted. These public hearing comments included concerns about access points on Indian Wells Road, the number of units, the types of units, height of the buildings, loss of open space and trees. There were also questions and comments from council, which included question regarding the distance from Highway 55 to Ansley Stream Lane, which is the entrance to the Blakely neighborhood to the south. Questions about the parking reduction requested. Questions about the existing farm pond on the site. There was also questions about the streetscape reduction along Carpenter Fire Station Road, an HVAC unit screening, and also questions about office use in the leasing space. And now, board, this is a case that furthers some policies of the Cary Community Plan, but only partially furthers or does not further other policies. You will note it's been over 6 months between the council public hearing and the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. And during this time, staff and the applicant have worked through several iterations of the revised proposal. On balance, staff finds the case to be consistent with the Cary Community Plan. We note that the proposed use and densities are consistent with the mixed neighborhood designation, which is found in the shape chapter. We note that the case lacks a substantial mix of uses within the PDD. However, Cary's LDO provides limited zoning options to achieve the densities that are called for within the mixed neighborhood designation, and therefore the PDD option allows the applicant to achieve the density requested. The case also has several modifications, including a reduction to the streetscape on Carpenter Fire Station Road, as well as clearing and grading within the streetscape. The applicant, however, has made a request to offset this request by increasing the streetscape since the initial public hearing from 20 feet to 30 feet in width. They've increased the masonry requirement to 45% along the north and east facades of buildings fronting Carpenter Fire Station Road. They've also added a condition committing to visually breaking up any building facade along Carpenter Fire Station Road. The applicants have also increased the open space from 1 to 1.5 acres and added additional conditions to address aesthetic quality of development. And so some of the board considerations that could be considered tonight would be, are the uses and the densities proposed appropriate? Does the use provide an appropriate transition? Transitions can be addressed through building height, streetscapes, buffer widths, planting standards, architectural designs. And then lastly are the modifications that are requested appropriate for the PDD. So this concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative, Jason Barron, is here to address the board. And following his presentation, staff will be available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dry. Mr. Chair and members of the board, Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group, here on behalf of the applicant in this case. We appreciate the opportunity to be presenting to you tonight. And that was not a typo in the staff's presentation. Our neighborhood meeting on this case was in fact in May of 2019. This is an interesting site and has been an interesting process to go through. And as Ms. Dry noted, it's been roughly 6 months or a little more than 6 months between the town council public hearing, which was actually pretty fair, working directly with the staff on conditions associated with this case to make sure that it's the right fit. It is in keeping with the PDD purposes and certainly in keeping with the Cary community plan. The staff's presentation through Ms. Dry has done a very good job of highlighting or providing the nuts and bolts details associated with this proposed development. I really want to highlight a handful of things. First, before I go too far into it, just want to let you know that in addition to me representing the applicant in this case, also here with me tonight virtually are Caitlin Shelby of Wood Partners. They are the proposed developer of the site. Jim Guyton with Design Resource Group. That's the firm that's been providing land planning for this development. And then lastly, Mr. Earl Llewellyn of Kimley Horn, who has provided traffic analysis and consulting on behalf of Wood Partners as we have moved through the process. As Ms. Dry noted, this is a primarily residential mixed-use development that's proposed along 55. As this board is aware, and you see these cases over and over again, there continues to be an extraordinarily high demand for multifamily all across the town of Cary. And that's especially true for sites that can serve major employment centers like RTP. And as the staff presentation showed, RTP is not too far from this site. The site also enjoys great access to the town's major thoroughfare network, whether it's Carpenter Fire and obviously Highway 55, and it's not too far from 540. And so we believe that from an overall use standpoint, a multifamily use is an appropriate use based upon kind of current market demands, the fact that the town's employment base continues to grow. We continue to see net positive growth from a citizen standpoint as folks continue to relocate to this area. And as I said, multifamily continues to be of an incredible high demand all across the town, and certainly true in North Cary, Northwest Cary. I'd also note or just remind you that the staff report notes that this particular mixed neighborhood is severely underserved by multifamily as compared to the other housing options that are available. Single family detached is being the most prominent with more than 50%, and multifamily only occupying approximately 17% of all of the units in this area. So again, it's a use that is highly demanded in the marketplace in this area, and it's a use that from this mixed neighborhood standpoint really is not prominently served. And so we believe that that is an important part of why the use makes sense. From the zoning condition standpoint, and there are a lot of them, I won't run through all of them in great detail, but I do want to highlight a handful of things. And first is that while we acknowledge that this doesn't have a lot of non-residential development associated with it, it is a mandatory mixed-use project. And what I mean by that is this isn't creating an entitlement for office to come, and then whenever it happens to occupy, that's when it will get built. As the conditions show you, the office commitment that's being made here is a minimum of 5,000 square feet, a maximum of 10,000 square feet, and will be developed at the same time as the multifamily. And so when the apartment community opens up, there will be an active non-residential presence on the site that will be able to serve not only the residents of this community, but also the community in general. And as you all could appreciate, as the pandemic has demonstrated, having non-traditional out of the office environs for people to work are highly demanded right now, and we believe that having that 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of office component will be highly complementary. The staff report does acknowledge that it doesn't have a lot of office use, and I just wanted to note for you that the 1.5 acres of open space that's depicted on the center of the site, that's really been dictated by Mother Nature. There was a farm pond there for years that has been drained by the owners, but we're fully expecting it to reform into a vast majority of that to reform into wetlands. And those wetlands have essentially served to bifurcate the developability of this site into what I would consider 2 discrete pods, kind of everything north of the open space and everything south of the open space operate in 2 discrete pods. As a result, it would be really hard to fit a meaningful amount of office on a site like this. And that's ignoring the fact that from an office standpoint, it's really not a quote unquote office site. It's located along a thoroughfare, but it's not located near the interchange with 540, which is where your office wants to go. And so we believe that the modest amount of office wired into this being mandatory as part of the multifamily is a more appropriate approach. And also I'd note that we do have residences directly across the street on Indian Wells. There's a handful of homes that back up to Indian Wells, but that is the Blakely community. That is a 55 and older community. We don't know how appropriate it would be to try to fit a lot of office onto this site. So again, we believe that a primarily multifamily use on the site with complementary office achieves really what the market's looking for, and also achieves what makes the most sense based upon the dirt that we're working with and the area that it's intended to be located on. Also want to note that, again, we've increased the open space even after the public hearing. We didn't receive a whole lot of criticism associated with the open space that was provided at that time. But as we've continued to work on design features to be able to address the PDD purposes that are noted in the ordinance, we've increased the open space. That includes, as has been noted, seating with benches, a 1,200 square foot dog park, and 50 upper story trees. And I think that is worth reiterating. For a site like this, the commitment to install and grow and maintain 50 upper story trees on this site is fairly unique in my experience. I haven't seen a whole lot of developers who have been willing to make that type of commitment. And I want to point out to you that that's 50 upper story trees in addition to all of the other trees that are required by the ordinance. Those operate independent of that and are essentially additive commitments that are being made in an attempt to kind of provide a more green landscape upon development. And so it's anticipated that those 50 trees could and will be planted in that 1.5 acre open space, providing for a very natural experience as people are enjoying the benches and the dog park, to have a prominently featured mature growing vegetation in that area is something we believe is going to be a really key component to the aesthetic of the experience. I'll also note, from a design and architecture standpoint, there are lots of commitments that have been made with respect to design and architecture, whether it's swimming pools, courtyards, screening of the HVAC units by the roof equipment, the electric vehicle charging stations, but certainly the increase in the masonry of the building along Carpenter Fire Station Road, up to 45% for those portions that face Carpenter Fire, as well as Highway 55, we believe are important parts of making a building in that location and on this site fit in the right way. I'll also note, for your benefit from a traffic standpoint, it's the rare staff report that you pick up, especially in this part of Cary. It's the rare traffic report or staff report that you pick up and you thumb through and you realize that all of the recommended improvements that came out of the traffic analysis report that was performed by the town have been made commitments of this rezoning case. There's not a single red X, which is what I'm always sensitive to as a representative who works with developers and applicants all the time. Those red X's and staff reports on traffic are always bugaboos for me and always things that concern me. And so it is nice to be able to be before you all and note that there are no red X's on traffic improvements. But if you have questions, again, Earl Llewellyn can answer those. The last 2 points I want to touch on, one relates to streetscapes and the other relates to the Carpenter Fire Station road widening that is occurring. On the streetscapes, we do have a request to be able to grade and clear into the Carpenter Fire and the Indian Wells streetscape. You'll note there was an attachment in your staff report of a tree inventory. That tree inventory demonstrates that the existing vegetation in those areas is not really stuff you want to keep. Along Carpenter Fire and really along Indian Wells, there's not a whole lot of mature vegetation along those streetscapes that would be worth saving at the time of development plan. So we went ahead and made the request to be able to remove it and then plant it to the type A standards that are proposed for this case. And lastly, Ms. Puckett, if you could go to slide number 5, I want to highlight for the benefit of this.
Mr. Barron, it's 10 minutes.
Oh, I apologize. Well, I'll wrap up very briefly. The Carpenter Fire Station widening project has had a significant impact on those sites immediately adjacent to Carpenter Fire, and we think this is a great way to be able to solve that. So with that, we'll answer questions that the group may have, and I apologize for running over.
Mr. McFarland, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. I am muted. I apologize to everybody. I'd like to thank Ms. Dry and Mr. Barron for your presentations and for the wealth of information that you provided. I'm sure the board members will have questions. So at this point, I'm going to ask each member to share any questions they have with both staff and the applicant. So I'll start off with Don Hamilton. Don, questions from the staff or applicant?
Just a quick one for staff. As the parking reduction, we've had this brought up recently as well, and I saw in the staff report that there will be a study done. Is it safe to assume that we're in that study, in the end, we're probably going to reduce the parking requirements? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Hamilton. We've hired a consultant who's completing a study, and while that study is still currently underway, we do note that our Cary's parking requirements are higher than many other municipalities, and so that could very well be an outcome of that study, would be an LDO amendment to change our parking ratios.
Don, do you have any other questions?
Actually, Katie's comments about halfway through totally cut out on my end. I don't know if everybody else heard them.
We heard that we did hear something cut off, so if you could get repeated.
If you could.
Katie?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did you say my last response cut out on you? Okay. Yeah, so the town of Cary has hired a consultant, and we are completing a parking study in the town of Cary for multifamily units. We are actually right in the middle of the study, have just recently completed some parking counts at various multifamily developments within Cary. And we anticipate the study to be wrapped up by spring or summer of this year. We do believe that, very well, one of the recommendations that comes out of the study will be to change our parking ratios through an LDO amendment. And what we want to find is, looking at the data, exactly what that parking ratio should be changed to.
Great, thank you. Nothing further from me.
Okay, thanks, Don. Mary Jo, any questions for the staff or applicant?
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Dry. There was something you mentioned about halfway through that referenced making road improvements to Highway 55, which I found sort of surprising. I'm not sure what the context was of that exactly. If you could kind of refresh what that reference was.
Yeah, I can start, but I'd also love to call on our traffic engineer, Priyatham Kanda. What I noted in the presentation was the applicant has committed to a ride-in and ride-out on Highway 55, and would also have to do any road widening per the Cary Community Plan requirements. But I'd love for Mr. Kanda to chime in and add any additional information if you can.
Good evening, this is Priyatham Kanda. Katie, I think you covered most of it. So the applicant would be required to complete half section widening on NC 55 which would be adding a third southbound lane as well as some sidewalk and curb and gutter along their frontage.
So that's a requirement to be able to do the right in, right out?
That would be a general requirement of the development plan. Whether they do the right in, right out, they would be required to provide that frontage widening.
I see. Okay. And how does that impact the current reconstruction or whatever's going on there with the Highway 55 project?
I don't believe it should have any direct impact because the right in, right out is little south of the current project that is ongoing on Carpenter Fire Station.
I see. Okay. That's really the only question I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary Jo. Chuck, questions for staff or the applicant? Chuck Montgomery? Seems though perhaps we lost Chuck.
Yes.
But we'll,
Yeah. The applicant probably got cut off by his time limit talking about the streets escape along Carpenter Road, Fire Station Road. And I wondered if he wanted to go back and answer more fully about that 30-foot streetscape.
Mr. Montgomery, I would be more than happy to answer that question. Thank you for that. So when we started this project, we were aware that there was a combination state and town project, DOT and Town of Cary project to realign Carpenter Fire Station Road, but it hadn't gotten into the design phase yet. So we beat them to the punch. We made assumptions with respect to what that widening would be, assuming that the existing location of Carpenter Fire Station Road wouldn't be shifting. And we made assumptions with respect to the widening that was part of that. When the state came back, they actually came back on 2 different occasions with updated designs. It resulted in 2 different things occurring. One, they added a turn lane that we hadn't anticipated, that we don't necessarily agree is necessary under the circumstances, but they're DOT roads and DOT says what goes. And so we have now had to accommodate a turn lane. And then the second, as Mr. I noted, was that the Carpenter Fire Station Road intersection was actually shifted south into this site. So the end result is, in some places, the width of that right-of-way is about 40 feet wider than we anticipated when this project started, and it's about 58, almost 60 feet wider than it exists as of today. So the result of that has been a significant impact to those parcels that are located along Carpenter Fire Station Road. So the exhibit that you're looking at right now is an exhibit that kind of pretends that this is all one development site, but the reality is there are multiple parcels that comprise this development site. And slide 5, I don't know if we have the ability to go to it, but slide 5, and there's a couple others, show you, yeah, this is a good way to kind of depict the number of different parcels. And so if you could imagine that the yellow line outlines the development site, you've got 2 sites along Carpenter Fire Station Road that are being impacted severely by that widening as well as the realignment. With those changes, the parcel on the left along Carpenter Fire Station Road, the developable area of that parcel is shrinking from 1.73 acres to 0.98 acres. And so roughly half of the developability of that site is going away with the Carpenter Fire Station Road. With the other parcel, the one at the hard intersection, that situation is even worse. It's going from 0.92 acres to 0.25 acres. So a quarter of an acre site is left. And the point that I was going to make there, Mr. Montgomery, is that the benefit of this zoning case is it allows those properties to be folded into this development so that the impacts to those individual owners are not nearly as onerous as they would be but for this site. Because if the zoning case were to go away, if for some reason these parcels weren't developed together, there would be a condemnation proceeding that would have that type of impact on those parcels. And what those owners would be left with would be really tough to do much of anything. A quarter acre site at a hard intersection, and then, again, less than an acre site immediately adjacent to it. So the point I was going to make there is just we see a benefit in having all of these properties developed in concert, not only because we believe it's the right thing to do, but as it relates specifically to that widening project. This property will be dedicated to the town or to the state for that widening, so there doesn't have to be a condemnation and all the things that go along with that.
Good. I think that answers my question.
Chuck, do you have any other questions?
No, that should do it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Steve Crutchfield. Steve, any questions for the staff of the applicant?
Two questions. The first one, I guess, is for the staff. When you calculate parking, we're starting to see now that developers are adding EV stations, which is really good. But those stations, theoretically, they're parking spaces that are only supposed to be used for people that are charging, and then theoretically they would move their car. So in effect, you lose those 6, 5, whatever they end up being spaces from general parking. I don't know if that really affects the reduction or if that's going to be part of your study, but that's kind of a fact of life when you have a parking like this. And that's, you don't have to, that's just a comment more than a question.
Okay, okay. Other questions, Steve?
The other one is on the connection. I just couldn't tell on the map. It's going to go from the parking area over to the Y. Does that just go straight into their parking lot only? You wouldn't, and is there a concern that that would be a cut through that you could basically turn into the Y, then go back out through the Y, and maybe that's not a concern, but I'm just wondering how that's going to work.
There is a private road that runs the length of the properties to the west. And I believe that the private road is going to turn into a public road at some point as you get further down towards Indian Wells Road. So it doesn't take you directly into the parking lot for the YMCA. It takes you into that access road where you would then be able to either go to the north out to Carpenter Fire Station Road or traverse it to the south out to Indian Wells.
So can anyone turn on that road? I didn't even notice it when I drove by there, to be honest with you.
Yes, that's correct. And I was looking at the aerials we had in this slide. Unfortunately, the road is so new. I don't think it even shows up on the aerials that we have associated with this PowerPoint. But yeah, it does run from Carpenter Fire Station all the way south to Indian Wells.
Okay, so people they're smart. They'll figure out how to do things.
And Mr. Crutchfield, if I could add, this is Jason Barron. The anecdotal information that we receive from folks who live in the Blakely community is that road is already being used as an alternative for folks to essentially move north and west without having to go out to 55. That folks who live in their community are turning left and then taking a right and heading up to Carpenter Fire.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
Any other questions, Steve?
That's it. Thank you.
Sure. Jessica Pearson, questions for staff or the applicant?
Thank you. I do have a question. Ms. Dry, you were talking about clearing and grading, and it wasn't entirely clear to me what this meant. Is this just applied to the streetscape area, or is the entire site going to be cleared?
The applicants ask specifically to conduct clearing and grading within the streetscape on Carpenter Fire Station Road and also along Indian Wells Road, and to replant them to the type A, to the appropriate standard that would be located at those particular areas. So those are the two specific requests that they've asked for this this site.
Okay, why?
That may be a better question for the applicant to chime in on. According to their justification, they've noted that the trees that they've completed a tree survey, and they've noted that the trees that are there currently there's not any a lot of mature trees, and they've indicated it would be more efficient to clear and grade and replant to the type A standard. But again, it may be good for the applicant to jump in on this because it's their justification.
Yes, and I'll hop in here. And Ms. Pearson, Ms. Dry touches on a portion of why their request is being made, and that is the tree inventory that's included in your staff report demonstrates that the trees that are currently in those streetscapes are not, they're scrag pines. There's really not mature trees that you would want to save in there. And honestly, given the topography of the site, being able to grade in those and then replant them to the Type A standard, we believe provides for a better streetscape and also frees up the ability to use the site a little bit better. I mean, it's a constrained site to begin with the environmental feature in the middle of it. So being able to get the latitude to grade into those areas, we think it's just going to be a more aesthetically pleasing experience, and will allow for the development to happen in a better fashion for us.
Okay, thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
No further question, Mr. McFarland.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. And Jessica McClure, questions for staff of the applicant.
Yeah, just one question for staff regarding the mixed use component and specifically the office square footage. And this may not be something that can be answered offhand. For a site like this, does the town have a target that they would be looking for in terms of square footage for this kind of site, or is it just as much as you can get?
We actually don't have a target. When you look at the Cary community plan, it points to, different land use categories on the future growth framework map found in Chapter 6. And it describes the land use mix and like high level policy, more generalities. It notes overall that the mixed neighborhood is a residential, primarily a residential area on the future growth framework map intended to provide housing for Research Triangle Park. It gives some general guidance that you can have non-residential uses on the periphery of the mixed neighborhood. So it leaves it open for, for a variety of applications. So yeah, to directly answer your question, there's not a specific number that the future growth framework map is looking for, and that's essentially because they're trying to build in some flexibility.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
That's all the questions. Okay, great. I have a number of questions, and I'll try to keep them in kind of groups, and then maybe I'll allow folks up to if they have any follow-up questions. I'm going to start off on kind of the bigger scale, which is, let's talk about the Carpenter Fire Station PDD. When was that first, or when did that come into existence? Do we know? I mean, roughly, was it late 90s?
The Carpenter Fire Station. Do you mind asking that question one more time?
Oh, sure. So I'm looking at, I'm thinking about the Carpenter Fire Station, that general development area. Was that originally a PDD of some sort or an MXD? Or has it come together as piecemeal?
I believe it's coming together more as piecemeal. From my knowledge of the area over the past few years, it's been individual developments, assemblages of properties that have come in within this area. It was developed at one point with large lot single family homes, and we've seen over the years groups of lots being purchased and redeveloped. So we're seeing a big evolution in this area, and not all in one big master plan, but more individual developments.
That helps me. Can you help me understand what's the difference between a minor and a major PDD? Because what the applicant's proposing a minor PDD, and so I'm just curious what differentiates a minor versus a major.
It's just the threshold with the amount of acres. I believe anything that's 25 acres or larger is a major PDD. Anything less than that is a minor. Okay,
thank you. The reason I was asking, and as I look at some maps in front of me, I realized that it wasn't part of the originally PDD. It has kind of come together, and being on the board long enough, I remember when many of these tracks come before us. And so that's my question. I'll save my comments on that later. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fourth road that's the private drive that's on the west side of the property. Who's the owner? If it's a private drive, who's the owner of that property? Who owns that now? Is that part of the Y or the Cross Point Church development, or? And somebody mentioned that at one point part of that may become a town maintained road.
That property is on the same parcel as the Northwest Cary YMCA and Cross Point Church.
Mm-hmm.
And it is owned by the YMCA, I believe.
Okay. And I saw in the circulation attachment for the circulation plan that there's a private vehicular circulation connection there. And I'm assuming that there's an agreement, easement of some sort with the YMCA to allow that. I don't know if I saw that somewhere, but.
I don't believe that that's addressed specifically in the PDD. I'd like to see if either the applicant or if Doug Loveland, our plan reviewer, would like to speak to how that would be handled during the plan review.
Yeah, I'll chime in, Ms. Dry. Mr. Chair, that there is an easement that has been provided along the YMCA parcel adjacent to this site. And just for your edification, my client has been working closely with the YMCA as the owners of that site on a number of issues, not necessarily related to particularly to that access issue, but related to easements that are needed for the widening of Indian Wells and other things. So we have been in close communication with the YMCA, but there has been an easement that was located on a plat that was recorded during the development of that site.
Okay, so there's. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could add to this, Doug Loveland with Planning and Development. Private
Sure.
streets are platted. They're noted as available for public use whenever they're platted in a development. So they're generally just designated for public use in any development. But thank you for Jason for also adding that. That's good to hear.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, because I know there's a townhome development going on the, I guess on the south, across that private road on the south side of the applicant's property. So that area is being developed out. Other parts of Indian Wells, I know have come before and going to be zoned. And so just to confirm, the Greenway trail that's planned there, and it's actually partly there, that'll become basically a street side trail after the developments come through. It's not going to cross through the property. It's going to be redirected as a street side trail along Carpenter Fire Station Road, correct?
That's correct. The Greenway Master Plan originally showed the Greenway essentially traversing in between that northern building and parking area in orange. And after working with the applicant, it was staff concurred with the applicant's proposal that it made more sense to just pull the Greenway up and tie it into the street side trail, which would be built along Carpenter Fire Station Road.
Okay, thank you. Maybe there's a question for Doug again. Doug Loveland is, and just out of curiosity, if that is a private road at the current standing, could the owner put in traffic calming devices on their own, traffic calming measures, if the cut through became an issue?
I might actually have to let Priyatham answer that. That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
There's curiosity. I've just.
Yes, they would be able to provide some traffic calming measures, but they would have to seek approval from the town in terms of what kind of traffic calming measures. Typically, we do not allow plastic speed humps that you see in some parking lots. It would have to be standard speed humps if they go that route. Okay,
I was just curious. Thank you. For the staff, the applicant's proposing 20.5 units per acre. What are we seeing in other developments that are coming in or have come in recently, particularly some of those to the north or just in general? Is that a lot of density? I mean, just in considering, I'm just trying to get an idea of just pushing the envelope, or?
I can, I don't have any hard data in front of me. I can answer just in generalities from what I've seen over the past few years. I will say that many of the multifamily developments that we are seeing proposed are asking for densities that are higher than what we've seen before. So 20 units per acre is within the ballpark of what we're seeing with a lot of requests these days.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's all the questions I have. I'll just go one more time as I look virtually up and down as to where we're sitting here as a board. Does any of the board members, I'll just call out one by one. Don, do you have any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay, Mary Jo, any other follow-up questions for staff or the applicant?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Chuck?
No further question.
Thank you. How about you, Steve? Any further questions?
No further questions.
Jessica Pearson?
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica McClure?
No further questions.
Okay, and I have no further questions as well. So thank you for the staff and applicant for your patience in answering our questions. So if there's no further questions on this case, would somebody like to make a motion on 19 REZ 06, Carpenter Fire Station PDD rezoning? There's a screen in front of you. You can pick one. If we have a motion on the floor, then we can begin our discussion. Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 19 REZ 06 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Is there a second?
I second that. This is Don.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Chuck, you want to start us off on the discussion?
I've looked at this fairly carefully. I was somewhat bothered by the streetscape reduction on Carpenter Fire Station Road, but I think in light of all the road improvements and everything that are being made there, that they're making the best of that situation with that 30-foot buffer. I was a little bit puzzled by the small amount of the office use, and I still feel that that's probably more pro forma than anything else, just to meet the requirements for the PDD. But in total, I think they're doing a good job with this particular location. And the broader question is this an appropriate site for multifamily? And I think because of its proximity to the Research Triangle Park, its location on major thoroughfares does make it appropriate for multifamily and is suited for the neighborhood. So on balance, I thought that it deserved approval.
Thank you, Chuck. Don, you had the second. Your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Chuck hit on everything that I was going to say. In reviewing the Cary community plan, it's actually listed in that area that moving it to a PDD is considered appropriate, and I do think everything balances out pretty well.
Okay, thanks, Don. Mary Jo, comments, things for discussion?
As Chuck said, yeah, I think because of those changes on the Carpenter Fire Station Road, it does limit the ability. In general, the site is certainly in an area that's very tightly compacted by the road construction and the existing Highway 55. So there are, it seems to me, fairly limited options. The multifamily does seem to be the most appropriate use, and certainly with its proximity to the park, it makes sense to provide additional housing. If in fact that is in high demand, it's certainly a place. It concerns me a little, and I'm sure there are reasons for it, probably pretty well laid out within this proposal, for the lack of access to the property off of 55, as well as the limited access to the other two areas. But it seems that with that connector road, at some point that might provide some additional options for the people that live there. It's just very, very limited in terms of accessibility to the plot. But I understand that there are reasons why that can't necessarily be broadened. So I'm in favor of the proposal as stated.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Jo. Steve, comments?
No further comments. I agree with what everyone has said so far, and I think it's an appropriate use for the project. And I look forward to seeing how the parking study comes out in maybe one of our future meetings.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Jessica Pearson, comments for discussion?
Yeah, just one comment. I always appreciate it when staff provides in their presentation information about how the application has changed and been informed by the neighborhood meetings and the feedback from council meetings. And so I always like to see how the application has been improved with that type of input. I agree with my fellow board members who've shared so far that the use and density seems appropriate to me, given its location and proximity to RTP. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. And Jessica McClure, comments for discussion?
Nothing new, pretty much on the same level with everybody else. I think it's appropriate for the location and what's around there. So I think it'll be good project.
Thanks, Jessica. You know, when I first saw this case and started looking at it, I'll have to admit that my visceral reaction was 300 units on that piece of property. I don't know about this. And, but I, like all of you, have come around, at least I've come around on it. And I think for a lot of the points that you make, I'd like to say really kudos to the applicant and to Wood Partners and everybody involved, Jason, the entire team there, because this is a project that's taken you, you know, from, as was mentioned, from the first, you know, neighborhood meeting, you know, going back to 2019. But the fact that the applicant has made the effort, taken the time to really try to make this a better project, be very thoughtful. And maybe I haven't been reading some prior cases close enough, but I just thought the amount of information, the fact that, you know, we had the PDD minor documents to look at, many of the adjustments that were done, and, you know, as was noted that yes, most, you know, all the road improvements around the immediate area were made. That is something or a rare bird we oftentimes see on all those sides, and making some, even the left turn lane for coming out of the development to the south, going well above the call, what's needed. The balloon test, which we didn't even talk about, but I did take a look at those, the results of that, to see that what the 50-foot balloon test would show in terms of the elevation and the conditions the applicants put in terms of height, screening of HVAC, increasing the buffer on the north side, all great kudos. You know, I thought a little bit about the office issue, and, you know, 5,000 square feet is not a lot of office, 5 to 10,000 square feet. And I think about what the plan was and what you typically see. It's not that there's not other commercial space opportunities along 55. There was other land, but I also think about, you know, to the south, we've had a case recently with just south of this site at Morrisville Parkway in 55, and we've seen some changes there. But that was also a mixed-use development where heavy emphasis on multifamily along with some commercial. So, and that was a larger site, and probably not as challenging as some of the challenges presented with this one. All sites have challenges. So on the whole, you know, I think that the modifications that have been made, the amenities have been made. I think that given where we are with 2021 and what we've seen in other parts of the in this area, I won't say right immediately, but within a mile or two, I've seen cases in the last 6 years that were zoned office that became residential because the demand is not there. Was not there for office, particularly not large scale office. It's going elsewhere. So I do think it does mix with that mix. I think that the process and the time and the inputs that made this a better project than it was than when it started perhaps 2 years ago. So, so with that, if there's no other discussion, I'll call on each of you for a vote, and we'll put this to a vote. So I'm going to call on each individual. Please indicate whether you support the motion or deny it. I'll call on each of you. Don Hamilton.
Aye.
Mary Jo Hill.
Aye.
Chuck Montgomery.
Aye.
Steve Crutchfield.
Aye.
Jessica Pearson.
Aye.
Jessica McClure.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously, by a 7-0 vote. And that's the end of that case. Thank you very much to the staff and the applicant.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda this evening under new and old business. Tonight we'll be hearing from Town Clerk Virginia Johnson regarding the festivities for the Cary's 150th celebration. Ms. Johnson, please proceed with your presentation.
Dan, thanks everybody for having me here tonight. We are in the year. We are actually in the year, the start of the 150th year. So I am making the board tours and updating everybody on what the town's planning to celebrate the 150th and how you can get involved. So I want to thank you for having me and also recognize John Hamilton. He is part of our Cary 150th task force. So Don and a group of other appointed citizens, one representing each board, has been meeting almost 2 years now. We had a lot of plans, as most people did for 2020 and the beginning of 2021, but COVID did change a lot, and so I'll touch on that as we move throughout the year. Throughout the slide. So also they couldn't make it here tonight with us, but our council liaison is Ed Yerhoff, and our chair of the Cary 150th Task Force is Sarah Martin, which some of you may be familiar with both of those people. Next slide. So tonight I'm just going to cover, what does 2021 in Cary look like? I've touched a little bit on our task force, but I'll talk some more about our staff team. I'll talk about some big and small initiatives, and then the next steps, questions, and hopefully a lot of encouragement for you to get involved this year. Next slide. So April 3rd, 1871, that's when Cary officially became incorporated by the state. The state approved our charter. In 1971, we had the 100th celebration. Some people, when we were starting to plan, had memories from the 100 celebrations and were able to come to the board and talk about it, or their mom and dads were involved. So it was really fun to hear about that. So on the screen, as you see, we have our first mayor, Frank Page, and then our current mayor, Mayor Weinbrat. A lot of people think that it's a little bit later in April. On our Cary charter, they actually put a typographical error. So our charter actually says C-A-R-E-Y. They realized the mistake and they changed it a couple days later. But we do recognize the first day that we were incorporated, even if it was with the wrong name. Next slide. So this is a picture, an overview of our task force that has been meeting. We are a group made up of an appointed person from each board, Don Hamilton being your representative on the board. And then also we have a lot of staff members who are involved that represent, it's a cross-departmental team. So one thing when we got started, it was important for us to determine a mission statement. And as you can see on the screen, we really focused on honoring the past, engaging the citizens in the present, and getting people excited about the future. And those words are the lenses that we've used for everything that we've planned throughout the year. So we've tried to make sure those three points are incorporated in what we're doing. Next slide. So our first event will be a date to remember. We are hoping that it will be held in July, pending that COVID is a thing of the past. And we're hoping. as many people are as they plan out their year. But this day to remember is really a community celebration. We hope to have it downtown. We hope that everybody gets involved and comes out and celebrates with us. Next slide. So a little bit about what to expect that day. So we do have the date saved as July 24, 2021. Of course, that's tentative. We're hoping we can keep it, but ready to shift if needed. One of the important things that the task force wanted to ensure was there was something for everyone. So we'll have a kids area for kids. We'll have a beer garden for the adults. We'll also, have the family games. They wanted to, if you could picture, take the last scene of Grease and then apply that to downtown Cary. That's the kind of celebration they wanted to have. So kind of some carnivals and look at it past, present, and future. So have the retro carnivals that you may have seen in the Grease scene, present games that you see now, and even larger esport games. And so you sit down and play Nintendos and things like that and set it up kind of in a living room style. We'll have an opening ceremony, a time capsule, which no celebration for 150 years wouldn't be complete without. We'll have a look at the past. So we'll have historical figures walking around and giving speeches so that you can interact with them and listen to them, and also storytellers, and having the wide range of storytellers from kids that can learn about the past through the storytellers to the whole family can sit down and listen. We hope that we will be able to gather, of course, and have a cupcake tower. And with that cupcake tower, we want to break the world record for the largest cupcake tower. So next time you drive through downtown, just envision this huge cupcake tower sitting on Fidelity Plaza, and that we will be known as Cary and hold the record for that cupcake tower. At the end, we have to close the day with a bang, and how we're going to do that is we're going to have a projection show on the Cary Art Center. Many of you have already seen where we put up pictures of the graduates, and that was a really popular program and appreciated throughout the community. We're going to use that same type of technology and create a whole show across the Cary Art Center. So something familiar you would see would be in Disney World when they do the show across the castles. Next slide. So then our closing event would be a Masquerade Gala at the Embassy Suites. And it will be based on the Venice Gala, Venice celebrations that I have each year, so that have the mask involved. And what we hope is that for 2020 and early 2021, we've been all have to wear a mask from the nose down, but we hope by the time November gets here, we'll all be able to wear a mask from the nose up and play off the theme of the year. Again, recognizing our past, present, and future. And one of the things is, we had originally planned this gala for a New Year's Eve celebration to happen, about a month ago, close to it. So we had to delay and we had to push back. And we ended up pushing back till November. And the same with our big celebration. That was actually supposed to occur in April on our birthday, April the 3rd, around that time area. But we decided to push back so we could hold it at a different time. And with both of these events, we're keeping COVID in mind. We can't be planning an event without thinking of that right now. So we are looking for ways of, with the larger event, could we have social distance? Could we limit the number of people that float in and out throughout the day? And the same thing with the Masquerade. It will be a ticketed event. We do hope there's an aspect of it that will raise money for the town associated nonprofits like Oasis and the Play It Forward. We also want to make sure it's inclusive. So how do we get people that normally wouldn't come to a gala in Cary? How do we get them there? How do we, maybe sponsor a ticket for them? Also, a new one that's been added and very much worthy to be at the top of the list is in the Masquerade. We want to recognize the frontline workers. We think that, you know, we think it would be cool, and we haven't worked out all the details, but you buy a ticket for yourself, and then you buy a ticket to send a nurse to the gala as well. Or even send a grocery clerk that worked throughout the whole COVID experience or COVID pandemic to be there as well and recognize them in our community. So next slide. So what to expect at Masquerade, other than some great costumes, which I'm all hoping you're thinking of right now. We're going to have lighted entryways. We're really going to have an experiential entryway to it. You go and you experience the rooms. We have embassy suites booked for it. Hope to do projections are really popular. Hope to do some larger than life projections on the wall, and so that you can kind of go in there and just experience the room. One thing we are working with is to build a box car, because we don't think any Cary's history is so based on history that no Cary 150th event would be complete unless we recognize the trains and its impact it's had on our town. But we hope to have that as like a quiet seating area. You can get away from the band, get out of the same room that you may have just had dinner in. And of course, keep a pandemic in mind, and we will adjust both of these events as needed as we get throughout the year. Next slide. So those are the two larger initiatives that we have going on, but we are doing some other things throughout the year, some smaller things. One of them being a tree giveaway. So we wanted to plant 150 trees and hopefully more throughout the community, but unfortunately, since we can't gather, we are going to do some sort of tree giveaway. So I hope that you are signed up for our news release and you can make time to come through and get a free tree. It will also have a Cary tree marker with it that says Cary 150 on it, so it's a way to commemorate the year in your own yard. One of the things we recognized early on is that people were still getting out of their house during the pandemic. They were going out walking, sightseeing. So we worked really hard to come up with some tours that are walking and driving tours that maybe you can even take with your family, still in your little your bubble, throughout Cary and learn about some of Cary's history. Those will be released throughout the year. Our first one will be released in February in celebration of African American month, and it will be the African American history tour of Cary and highlight some really neat areas and some really neat facts throughout town. We have a documentary that is being produced, and we hope to have that released in April, because we hope people are at home and they can view it from their computer and learn about Cary's history. Again, it plays on the words, the past, the present, and future. It's a 30-minute documentary with 10 minutes kind of in each section. It's a really cutting edge way to get a documentary, because everything is being shot on an iPhone, which we're excited about. Then we will have a historic play that's being written. You may have seen this on social media or throughout the news, but we have partnered with Amazing Place Productions and Cary Players, and they are currently doing an original screenwrite for the celebration year. And they collected stories, so it's not the stories that you hear about and roundabout Cary. Now, of course, we're helping them fact check them a little bit, but they did go into the community and they said, tell us your family story, tell us something that, as Catherine says, she says, even the page walker doesn't know about. So we look forward to seeing kind of all the things that they have uncovered as they went throughout the community and collected these stories. The last picture here represents a construction fence. We're working with the marketing firm for our downtown park to create a Cary 150th section of the construction fence. Right now we've turned in our timeline to them, so maybe it's you walk along and you can see the timeline of Cary, or maybe it's the themes throughout Cary, you know, the trains, the education, and playing on the words the past, present, future, the demographics of Cary now. So we hope that as people go out and enjoy the downtown area and they're in the downtown park area, they can walk around and see the construction fence. And it'll be along with other things, other advertisements about what's being planned for the park. We'll have art initiatives as well that are happening, and commemorative items that will be sold throughout the year. So next slide. So our big kickoff event is our history moment. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but one thing that's really neat is our website will go live as well this Friday. And, you know, pre-COVID, we had a story booth. If anybody's familiar with StoryCorps, where you go in and you can answer the questions. We had that same similar booth that we were going to take to each festival and have people just sit in there and tell us about your story, about how you got to Cary and everything, and your favorite memories of Cary. Well, we have taken that concept and we put it on our website, and we're creating a digital scrapbook. So everybody's going to have the opportunity to go in and submit your story. So it's 250 words. You can submit a picture along with it, but things that you could talk about was what brought you here to Cary? What do you look forward to the future in Cary? What's your favorite moment, your favorite place? And then they'll be displayed on our website and also promoted on social media. When I was speaking to the PRCR board, they thought it was a cool thing if we could print the stories and put it in our time capsule, so that 100 years from now, somebody could go back and read them. I hope that you all get involved and go to our website. You can, if you'd like to be somebody who has their story kind of posted as one of the first ones, you can submit it to me, and we can get it up and going on the website when it goes live. And a big thanks to Don, because he was the first one. He was the first story submitted, and then we were happy to have it. And he talked about being a police officer in Cary, and it was really a really good story. Next slide. So, like, if you remember the centennial moments that happened on the news when the United States celebrated its 200th anniversary, each night the news would give a little segment of history. So Ed has decided to take that idea and turn it into a Cary history moment. And our first one will happen this Thursday at our council meeting. So the January 28th, I hope you all tune in or check in the next day to watch the link. But Councilmember Urha will be talking about how Cary became a town. And we hope that people are interested to learn about Cary's history through this way. It'll be posted on our website and our YouTube channel, so you can watch later as well. Next slide. So as you're thinking, hopefully, about your story and what you're going to submit for our website, I hope that you also sign up for our news release, or have already, because that's where we're going to use for future communication. Also, we'll use all the social media platforms to get the word out as well. And then John, from time to time, may bring back updates for you as well. Don, did you have anything you'd like to add?
You pretty well covered it, Jenny. I appreciate it. It's really hard to believe it's been 2 years. You look at everything that's gone on in our world and during that time, and I have been very impressed with staff and the committee of how nimble and attentive everyone has been to kind of bring this together, and I think it's really going to be a success. I just encourage everybody to share your story. Please go and do that and have a picture too. It was kind of embarrassing when I saw my picture from the 90s today. I looking like that. And please attend the council meeting this Thursday to hear Councilman Urha's historical moment.
Thanks, Don. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you had any thoughts or feedback about the 150th year, happy to have that now, and always you can email them later as well.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, very much for updating us on what looks to be a lot of great activities. Anybody have any questions or thoughts for Jenny? Not hearing any, but Ginny's the town clerk, and you can certainly get a hold of her there, or ideas to also to Dawn. It is exciting. Hopefully that our recovery from the pandemic will be such that these events will be able to happen this year, because I think it'll be perfect as everybody starts coming out of our caves, if you will, and feel like we've been in a long hibernation. It'll be a great opportunity for everybody to get out and about, and particularly a lot of things happening downtown. People see the transformation there. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. So we don't have any other business before us tonight. So that was our last item on the agenda. So I'll thank everybody for participating in tonight's meeting, and I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Hope you have a great night. Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Good night.